And there's that sound. And there's that sound. Have you missed me? I hope so. I have missed you big time. I have missed you big time. I've been looking forward to this for 3 months. I've been away. But the Kaiser right now, January 20th, is back. Ow! We're going to rock out too. Oh my goodness. Are we going to rock out? We got a great show. It's going to be great. You're watching PaleocratDiaries. I am your host, the Kaiser, the one and only, the OG, the Grand Poobah, Jeremiah Bannister. It's true. It's true. It's nobody else. It's just me. Just me today. I've been writing a book. I've been out and about doing my stuff, and now it's out of my hands all the way. Because I rocked it out. Because I gave it everything I had. I gave it every single thing I had. And that's what we do here at the show. We put every single one of our thoughts and our words and our deeds in alignment. And what do we align it with? We align it with the divine constitution of the visible church. Every single thought, every single word, every single deed. And it's a trying time. It's difficult. It's a daunting task all the way. Are you serious? How are we possibly going to do that? Well, I don't know. Maybe, the Lord. Because he reigns right now. He reigns right now. Heaven and earth is his. He has social kingship. Period. End of story. So we got to give him back everything. All of those gifts and talents that you got, every single thing you have, you give to him. And how do we do that here? Simple enough. Never give up. You keep on smiling. And you remember that one day, we're all gonna die. It's totally true. And that's why we gotta dream bigger thoughts. We've gotta really, really take a good look at the gifts and talents God gave us and then use it all. That's what we're doing here. That's what we're doing here. I hope everything's going good. Over on this side. Oh, the Kaiser's in the house. Yay. What's that? Dancing with your sombrero. Yay. Yes, very good. It has been a while. Oh, my goodness gracious. Prepping for heaven. Jesus is king. You better believe it. Glad to see everybody from the Wolfpack. Have you missed me? Have you missed me? A little eaters? Little eats a bits? Little eats tinies? Eatsy weetsers, right? Was it boring a little? Did the world lose its mind? I kind of felt like that. I was living in a bubble, I was living in this weird world where there was like no internet for a while. But I was like, I'm not gonna be online. I'm not gonna do anything. Nothing to distract me because all these years, for like 5 years or 4 years, whatever, been talking about writing a book about my daughter's life and death with cancer, right? The lessons we learned, the things we learned along the way, and how that ultimately led our family back to the Catholic Church, back to the faith at all. Right? Back to faith at all. And so I've been talking about it, but I had to get it done. And so I basically shut everything out. Everything. I was like the weirdo that wakes up in the morning and is wearing the bathrobe all day. Right? It's kind of like, I'm being dead serious. That's actually what I was doing. But I wasn't even involved with the Wolfpack. And I apologize. A huge apology to the people in the Wolfpack. Never again. I'll never do this again. Where I step away. I'll never have to. I'm never going to write another book quite like this one. This story, it's traumatizing. At 3 months away, it was straight up just diving headfirst into an abyss. Right away, just trauma. But you know it. You know it going in. But I did it, and I did it without the help of my friends. And that, to me, is one of the bigger lessons I learned about this, was that I'm better with the help of my friends. I'm better with the help of the people in the Wolfpack. That's why we're here. That's why I say I want friends, not fans, and friends, not followers, that sort of thing. That's why we talk that way. And then all of a sudden, what happens? Oh, I'm writing a book, and what do? I basically abandon my friends. I shut all my friends out. Look, I love you guys. I miss this. I miss doing what we do. I do. I miss it so bad. Let me get some of this stuff out of here. Dangerous now. I love that. And I've missed that stuff. So we've got some awesome stuff going. The book, I will say this, the last announcement about the book. So the book, my sister, and I'll have my sister on, we'll have an interview sometime, just the two of us talking about even the process that we went through and like the thoughts and feelings that she had while helping me in the editing process of the book. But it's in her hands right now. And so it's one of those things where I've kind of left it to her, and she's putting putting dots on everything. If there's a period or a space that I missed or an extra space that ought not be there, that sort of thing. On the final copy, I had Phil from the Wolfpack, Phil Gonzalez, he helped me a lot with a bunch of that in the earlier draft, but as stuff went along, if there was anything that continued, she's been major help. Well, that kind of stuff right now, because we've already gone through the big bulky edits, the stuff that's really going to need major work. Right now, that's the final thing, and it's her. So there's that. Once that's done, we have the page number. Once that's done, the cover art is set because we have the size of the cover, because it's one big slip, right? And then, I don't know, is it 48 hours or something like that? It's on shelves. I don't know. It's my first book I've ever done. And I went and wrote an amazing novel for you. And I thought originally I was like, I'm going to get it done by Christmas. And I would have. In fact, I was ready to go. And then I had my sister check it out. Yeah, it was not ready to go. And I'm glad my sister called it out. I'm glad she did. Because there were things that she helped me with. She a pure genius. Anyway, don't want to talk too much about it. There's going to be lots of talking about it. Because once the book comes out, once it's available, and once that link goes live, blam, it's just on. It is just blam, 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 just all over the place. I even got something out. I got something out just for it. It's going to be so rocking. It's like Hulk smash. People are going to be Hulk smashing that button. Blam, blam, blam. I need it. Yeah. And they're going to get it. It's going to be fantastic. Life-changing. They're going to tell their friends, tell their family, classmates, co-workers, all of that stuff. They're going to let them know. It's going to be absolutely, absolutely amazing. Oh. All right. We got to move on. We got to keep rocking because ultimately I have to talk about a specific thing. And normally it would be divided up. I was kind of a little bit like taken back. Like, oh no, what, am I missing something? Saint Maker. I'm missing Saint Maker. I don't know, because I was away. Saint Maker, I wasn't online hardly at all. Even less than the dude over at Saint Maker. Great guy. I think that they're just under the impression I'm not doing videos anymore because I wasn't making videos for a while. And so that's no longer there. So it's no longer there. And we're still waiting. We're still waiting for some of the ads that are going to be placed in here. And look, if you want to roll with us and you want to support the program and you want to get your ideas and your thoughts out there, stuff like that, hit us up, PaleocratDiaries at gmail.com. And there it is. Look at this. There's the sound. Yeah. Come on now. You know what it is. It is the PaleocratDiaries alert system. It's what it is. Letting people all around the world, right? To the north, to the south, to the east, and to the west. Letting everybody know that PaleocratDiaries is on the air. That your boy is rocking the mic after almost 3.5 months of being away. Writing a book that's going to just blow up. You're going to love it. Ah! You're going to love it. But today, we're going to be talking about, a little bit of this. A little bit of this. Hank Hanegraaff, Counterfeit Revival. Counterfeit Revival. We're going to be talking about the new apostolic movement. We're going to be talking about charismatic chaos, the mania, the wild. Is there ever an instance where restorationism is legit? It's a good question. I think there might even be people who are tuned in who aren't just angry that I'm actually still here. They're like, no, I thought he was gone. No, I am not gone. I am not gone. In fact, it is like signed in with his signature right there in the contract, in fact. Right? We're going to be talking about this book. We're going to be talking about restorationism. And it might wrangle some folks because there are even people on our side of the aisle, not just in the world of like full-blown Protestant charismania, but even in the Catholic side of the aisle that suffers from the difficulties and things that are wrapped up with restorationism. And you can begin to see, we're going to go back into the world that Ronald Knox was talking about in his final chapter of Enthusiasm. We're going to be talking about it. It's going to be an awesome time. It's going to be an awesome time, right? So let all your friends know. Let everybody know to tune in right now or on the replay. Doesn't matter as long as they become part of the group. And check out the Telegram. Go in the description below. Go to Telegram because I think right after the show, I think we've got a party over there. I think we do. It's a live chat. Everybody can get involved. Make sure. I think it's what? the letter T.me/the Wolfpack chat. Pure and simple. T.me/the Wolfpack chat. Pure and simple. That's what it is. That's what it is. All right, look. I love this. Oh, do I love this. And I'm still waiting on my coffee. My kids, I'll tell you. I learned something being away. I got a bunch of entitled children. It's because I haven't, I'm like one of those guys, I've got a one of those like big coffee sticks. Also, it might be a little hot. I'm not sure if I added enough ice cubes or not. Enough ice cubes? We'll find out. Hold on. Okay. Oh. Really? No, I'm kidding, dude. It's perfectly fine. I love you, homie. Yeah. Yeah. Love you, Papa. Yep. Oh, I got my eyes on him, too. I got my eyes on him. All of them. He might look like he's good right now. He knows that camera's rolling. He knows it's rolling. But they're entitled. They're spoiled. My kids. It's because, I don't ask them to do much, right? I ask them to take care of the basic effects of the show, right? The pre-production, the production room while everything's going live, the post-production, all the social media stuff, basic stuff, right? Real 101 type stuff. I go above and beyond. I buy them fancy Fisher-Price computers and everything. And they don't even get the coffee ready. But they got me a straw. Oh, they got me a straw. Oh, they got me a straw. I was gonna put up the comments. Oh no. Yeah, I'll just keep this up. Why not? I'm just gonna keep it. And by the way, if you would like to connect with me during the show, all you got to do, make sure to put the @ symbol at the meaning of Catholic. Do not put at Paleocrat. I won't see it. I won't see it because I'm not signed in as Paleocrat. So I don't even be able to see it. You got to put the meaning of Catholic. You got to do it. So, okay. Now, first of all, we're going to be talking. I already talked about the intro of this book. We talked about the New Apostolic Movement, and it was taken from the intro talking about the prophets that come into a denomination, or the people that come in with a new idea. And they're energumens, right? They've got the Spirit working through them all the way, and they're speaking. And they've got kind of an air, right, of mystery around them, even of power, stuff like that. And they come in and they begin using that, even letting go of people on the staff and letting go of people who've been working with the church for a long time and cutting them all the way, saying, "Look, you disagree, you're out." And they don't even have to be so explicit, because sometimes they can do kind of the going around a little bit by saying, well, if you disagree with us, you're going to have the curse of God on your family. It's like, well, which one's worse? Get out of here or the curse of God? So they'll start with the curse of God. It's true. And so Hank Hanegraaff, right, who's Eastern Orthodox now, and when he wrote this, though, He was a Protestant guy when he wrote this. Bible Answer Man. I think he still goes by that. I think. I don't follow his work anymore. Interestingly enough. I don't really follow what he does much anymore. Since his conversion. But I used to follow him. I used to listen to him and everything else. We've already talked about one of the books that he did. We talked about Christianity in Crisis, which was our series on the Word of Faith movement. And there's an overlap. You'll see it. Right, so the Word of Faith movement, you could be part of this movement. Sorry, you could be part of the, New Apostolic movement. You could be part of that, and yet not necessarily be Word of Faith. You could go to the revivals. The revivals could have a dramatic impact on your life that take place at assemblages that are connected with this, right? But you don't have to be that. You don't have to be word of faith, right? But if you're word of faith, there's a real big possibility that you're down with this, right? So, I mean, it's interesting kind of interplay between different belief systems that exist even within the enthusiasm of word of faith. Now, in this book, he goes through, he has this technique, right? This technique where he will put together one of these, you create a word, right? You create a word and you say, you're going to go ahead, how does he say, to develop an acronym. So for this, his acronym that he's used for this particular book is the word flesh, right? Which he believes is connected, of course, with, he believes these are works of the flesh, that the manifestations that take place at these revivals, that this is works of the flesh. Fabrications. And it's based, of course, he bases this, his definition, his understanding, off of Galatians 5:19 through 26. That's Hanegraaff, right? But he breaks it up into 5 different parts, mainly. Fabrications, fantasies, and frauds, lying signs and wonders, end-time restorationism, slain in the spirit, hypnotism, okay? So he's got, those are, that's the way that he breaks this down. Now, we're going to use it for different purposes, right? This is part of our, the overall enthusiasm series that we've been doing. We began with Knox. We've talked about Kingdom of the Cult. We've talked about mystics and messiahs. In fact, as far as I know, I think we're done. Because I start some of the series, I start at the end, and I always forget I start at the end. So then I get to the end. By that time, I've forgotten, and then I think that the series is not done when, in fact, it's already over. But then I didn't end well on the final one, right? But we're not going to follow the same thing this way. We followed it with Christianity in Crisis. We followed it with other things that he's been connected with. But this right here, a fantastic book, by the way, on this. And I don't agree with him entirely. And not just on the obvious things, the Protestant-Catholic divide, right? So certain distinctives and distinctions that are there, we have disagreements. But I have disagreements even beyond that. And if you've got disagreements with me, of course, let me know in the comments below. You're going to do it. Now, he talks about Jonathan Edwards. Have you ever read Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God? If so, how old were you? How old were you when you read it? Was it required reading? Was it bedtime reading in your home? Where did you come from? It'll give, in fact, gives a decent idea a little bit for who you are, like your upbringing and what kind of school you may have attended, if in fact you put that. And so, but have you ever read it? Jonathan Edwards, though, right? Talking about the Great Awakenings, talking about revivalism in the United States. And he says, leaders of the Counterfeit Revival appealed to Jonathan Edwards to validate their lying signs and wonders. Edwards, however, believed that the very kind of signs and wonders to which they appeal contributed significantly to the fall of the First Great Awakening, while imprudences and irregularities were byproducts of the First Great Awakening. In the second, they were the bottom line, right? So the reason I want to bring this up is not to say, oh, well, Edwards was right in all of the way that he understood the movements of the Spirit. I don't need to go to him. But yet I can also see someone within the Protestant mind of Edwards with his criticisms that says, look, these would be similar criticisms that I would have to that sort of activity going on, even as a Catholic person. In fact, in some ways, he spoke in much the same way that Knox would when talking about enthusiasms. He even uses the word. He knew what it was, but yet so many people now associate that sort of activity with him because it was stuff that was going on sometimes when he would speak. But they don't even know that he's actually written about what he thinks are problems. And so for the viewers of this show, viewers of this show have a better idea when they do apologetics. You talk to people, they have a better idea. I'll say this, though, I need to clarify. I'm not bringing this up to say, oh, well, look, Jonathan Edwards says this. If you bring this up to a Protestant, that's the end of the game. It's, in fact, not. Because what gives that guy authority? So what? Whoop-de-doo. Good for him. And people may say, oh, Jonathan Edwards, I don't care what he says. He was wrong about that. It's just his opinion, his experiences. Mine are different. Right? But I'm bringing it up because number one, it's in the book. It shows similarities between positions that would be even on the other side of many different major time divides, and that we can share that even in our opposition. But at times, restoration I want you to think too. I want you to think about this, right? And the reason why I thought this was important, the idea of appealing to somebody who is iconic, somebody who is iconic in that regard to justify your position. Some people will do that when talking about Martin Luther King Jr. People talk about Gandhi. People say, well, Gandhi did this. They'll talk about somebody. Sometimes it would be, an individual. Take, for example, Athanasius. Saint Athanasius. People use Saint Athanasius many times in a justification not only of the conditions that they're living in, but their actions within those conditions and their understanding even of restorationism and how that operates, the mechanisms at play within a world that understands, especially at that magnitude we're talking about, the church in crisis and falling away, the spectrum of apostasy that people would believe. And so you'll see throughout this similarities, and you'll say, and you may know people, and there's people cutting all across the spectrum over the liturgy wars who fall on this, fall on the sort of some kind of restorationism. Liberals too, by the way. End-time restorationism, the belief that at the end of the age, God will restore supernatural signs, super apostles, and prophets, is a key ingredient in the mythology of the Counterfeit Revival. In the early morning hours of the first day of the 20th century, Charles Parham laid his hand on a young woman named Agnes Osman, and she began to speak Chinese. Such was the claim. Right? When she tried to write, only Chinese characters emerged from her pen. So she's not only speaking in tongues, according to Parham, as you've got this lady, Agnes Osman, he lays hands on her, she begins speaking in tongues, and it's not just tongues, apparently, it's Chinese. And this all goes down in Kansas. What is it, Topeka? Is this what we're talking about? What we're talking about? And when she tried to write, she's like, look, guys, watch this. Blam! Only Chinese characters emerged from her pen. Parham was utterly convinced that Osman's experience was a prelude to a global revival and a precursor to end-time restorationism. By the middle of the 20th century, another hoax took center stage. Men like A.A. Allen, William Branham, and Jack Coe perpetrated the myth that a restoration of healing would lead to a final Pentecost greater than the first. In the twilight of the 20th century, counterfeit revival leaders began to teach that God is restoring super apostles and prophets of the end time church. Yeah. And so we're so familiar, and for obvious reasons, we're more familiar with people from the 20th century. We might go back a little bit into the 19th. Right? But we learned in our enthusiasm series that the further you go back, most people, it becomes real weird. The Donatists, I've heard it. The Donatists? No, not that. Okay. So you have people that it becomes mysterious. They normally don't like to go back very far. People prefer current events. What's happening right now? Why is it relevant to me right now? And the further back it goes, the further they feel that it's disconnected from them. So they don't like to go back that far. But without going back that far, they don't realize how they got where they are. That's the whole idea of the enthusiasm series. And for this, we can find that even the people associated with 20th century revivalism, right? The big tent, pop-ups, people going around, the big tent revivalism, even that, those leaders of that, they're not actually the ones that are actually the leaders. What we're going to find out too is that it goes back even further than this. In fact, it goes back as far back as the early 1800s. The early 1800s. Around the time of Mormonism. Some weirdness going around. Something's in the water. Something is in the air. Something's in the air. All right. Now I'm gonna skip over, as you can see. I'll show you. Holy Ghost bartender. We're gonna talk about that cat, Rodney Howard Brown. I actually went back and rewatched some of this stuff. I went back and I was watching stuff from the Toronto Airport Vineyard. I was watching stuff from the Assemblies of God down there in Pensacola, Brownsville, watching stuff about that, and the logic that people had, how it began, where were they, who was there, were there people involved, ahead of time? It was amazing. It was amazing, and what kind of experiences not only did I see growing up, but that I saw, and on the one hand, I knew people, and at times myself felt embarrassed by what I saw. And yet on the other hand, part of me wanted that. And another part of me just excused it because it was my family, my friends. That's how I grew up. And that's what I thought, God and the Holy Ghost. I thought that's how it worked. That's just Christianity. That's the purpose for all of this. That's a part of the storyline is that season that we're going to talk about, that season where the apostles reemerge. You begin having the reemergence of the fivefold ministry. Begin having that. You begin having the healing. You begin having the prophecy, the role of the apostle, where they begin taking the name for themselves. A remarkable feat in all of history. It has to be a special mission. Extraordinary mission. It must. And they must, in fact, show miracles. Which means that the skeptic and the critic, the person who's like, look, I don't know about that. I'm reluctant. I'm hesitant. I got reservations. That person needs to ask difficult questions. They need to ask difficult questions. And it's also why it matters when so many of these guys don't provide information validating what they're doing. It would be one thing if somebody dies and you say, well, I don't know what's on the other side. I can't validate that. But if you all of a sudden you're coming back and you're making certain claims, or a person comes back to life and lives, the idea is you brought them back from the dead, or you healed them of their sickness, then what happens after that actually matters. You need to have a follow-up. You need to have a follow-up with Dr. Hen. Doctor. Say, yeah, but they don't like it. They don't do it. They don't like it. Not even in the same meeting. I just saw, I'm sorry for the little rabbit trailer. I saw, there was, what video was I watching? What video was I watching? And they were, Hill. Steve Hill, isn't it? Down at Brownsville. And, claiming to heal people, claiming that a guy's healed of his eyes. Guy comes up. I think this is maybe the first person who came up for prayer when the outpouring, the day that's attributed, and the service that's often attributed to the advent, the origin of the Brownsville revival. But the guy that went up, he wanted his eyes to be healed. Doesn't explain what it is, just kind of waves at his eyes and says, my eyes. But he went up there quick. He prayed over him. I didn't recall seeing at any point where they went back to the original guy and asked him how his eyes were. By that point, by the time the dude even woke up, you probably have tons of people all around. It would have been easy just to have somebody wait around. They don't do it. They book out of the way. It really puts kind of cramps the whole idea of going from place to place, making claims that you can't prove, and you can exaggerate the numbers. Makes it tough if it's in there. But the people who host it ought to do it. Whoa, wait a second. We've got an idea. This is an idea. Shh. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody this. This is what we got to do. Well, we got to come in, real close. Come on, all the way. What we've got to do, we've got to somehow make it so that they end up coming to us, so that we have hosted an event. Somehow we pay for it, and that we are able somehow to put people at those doors and to be involved in some way with that. And that we don't participate with every single jot and tittle that group says, just so that we can have a basic idea for who some folks are. Well, no, we don't even have to do that. I'm so sorry. They already do. If you say, well, that sounds kind of intrusive. A lot of these places already do. You just got to get your paws on that. Just got to get your paws on and just follow some of those people and say, look, you said you were healed. How you doing? How many fingers am I holding up? No? Doing pretty good. So we'll talk about him at a different time. We'll talk about him. And we'll talk about, I'm almost done with the Waco series. I said I was going to talk about that, and I shall, believe me. But I'm going to be talking about it after I'm done watching the series on it. It's a docudrama or whatever kind of thing, where it's based on the story. But it's been fascinating. I think I've got 2 episodes left. Once that's done, and once I rewatch a video that was very impactful to me in my understanding of certain events, key events of that, we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about a couple other ones, and then we'll also continue in this vein. Insofar as the Enthusiasm series goes, doesn't say anything about what we're going to be doing in the future with presuppositionalism, but I think I'm going to be talking about a Catholic Answers article pretty soon. I think I'm going to be talking about one of those. Might even have to buy myself a copy of that. I think I know a guy who can help me with that. You'll love it when it happens. You'll love it. So, okay. So he goes through and, okay, so the idea of restorationism is always tethered to an idea of the conditions of a great apostasy. Whether it's new right now or whether it's something in the distant past doesn't really matter. Once you've breached the notion that the church has defected and mutated in such a way that restoring it needs to take place, which this is really what it is. It's not just miracles for them. It's not just that. It's also governance, authority, jurisdiction. These are things that the apostles and the prophets in these movements, these are things of serious consideration. And ask anyone who's on the receiving end of them, who says, I was here first. You're like, are you prophesying and healing people over in other countries? Yeah. And there's this idea, too, that very strange things, and we have this. I mean, look, most of the time that we have a Eucharistic miracle, it's what? It's not something good, is it? Not something amazing. The miracle is, obviously, the miracle is, but not, right? Not the reason for it. It's typically done within the context of bad things. Same thing with revivals, by the way. We've talked about that before. Same thing. That's why there needs to be a revival. And especially when you get into the world of this, when you get into the world of restorationism, it's going to require, the bigger your claim is of what you're restoring, the bigger the nature of it and the role of it and the significance of it in not just people's individual lives, but the grand the scheme, the grand plan of God and human history. You're going to have more than, well, I think I got a pretty dope interpretation. Right? You're going to have more than that. I don't know what to tell you. If you come to me and you tell me that there's this cataclysmic thing, that the entire church is lost, that everything is gone, that there was a huge mistake, and I say, in whose name do you come? And you go, I come in mine. And I say, based on what? I have a really good idea. I interpreted something, and I've studied the Hebrew and the Greek. Whoop-dee-doo. Who cares? Nobody cares. 0 people. Well, no. Let me take it back. Some people care. Some people do. But it's less and less and less all the time. Number one, more and more people get it. But more and more people are beginning. Oh, no. Oh, no, I got to copy that. I got coffee on my... Yeah, but the more people that get into it, the more people that study it. The more people that study it, the more people realize there's major differences. Hold on a second. But there's this idea. So, and that a lot of them, because of the need for them to talk big, the grandiose nature of the vision that they have of themselves, their role, society, everything else, it's a cataclysm. It's apocalyptic. No, in a different way than, apocalypse, that life in itself, there's a kind of apocalyptic dynamic to all of life. That'd be like saying, well, in all of life, we're always dying. That is true, but it's also a waste of time in certain conversations to point that out. But the more that you need that burden of proof, getting back to that, the more you need that burden of proof, the more you're going to end up seeing people who will at least meet you there. Some people won't. I actually have to give credit. I have to give credit to these folks, right? More in this instance than a lot of the enthusiastic Catholic people I know. Because at least they recognize that being neck deep in the end times, you're going to be having more, at that point, more than just simply rumor of wars. Right? You're going to be having way worse than people making a living in open daylight, right? Out and about with billboards and magazines and newspapers and everything else with a brand, maybe even TV stations that peddle this very thing. You got to play that into the 4D chess. Why are they doing that? But at least they recognize the significance of having some sort of evidence, some sort of proof to validate who you are. You can't just say something. But most enthusiasts understand this. That's something we ought to give credit for. Say, look, at least they're not just simply exchanging and swapping ideas and getting lost in the Bible rap battle. At least they come to you and they'll tell you that they perform miracles, that people were brought back from the dead. Typically, when that happened, they didn't need to be told, though. They didn't need to be told. Like in the past. If you had a prophet or somebody with an extraordinary mission, somebody that's coming in, doing all the kind of restoration, bringing it back, that sort of thing. And buggers are coming back, and it's big. It's big. Everybody knows it. Even in the situation of Josiah, everybody knew it. He brought everybody together. You know how huge that is? It's cataclysmic. So they say this. The primary idea for them, the revivalists, right? The people that peddle the idea of restorationism from a charismatic perspective, and I flip it around too, is to persuade people that certain experiences, for the charismatic, it would include sardonic laughter, spasmodic jerks, slaying in the spirit, and other enthusiasms. He has it in quotes. And he says these were not only pervasive in the First Great Awakening, but they were also promoted by such historical heavyweights as Jonathan Edwards, popularly cited as one of the greatest theological minds produced in America. Now, this too, he's saying that this is what they'll say. This is what they'll say. Right? Their primary ploy. So he said the people that are advocating this, their idea is to say that these extreme examples, these extreme manifestations, what they call manifestations, that those are in fact from the Lord, and they are evidences and fruits and proofs that validate, that give substance to the claims that they make about who they are, the role they have in the church, the role they have in history. And get this out of your mind right now, unlike a lot of the rapture-ready people, it's not all doom and gloom. For some, it's the opposite. It's like a triumphant thing. Now, Hanegraaff, he believes that the worst thing to him that they did is that they're trying to they're trying to steal, to claim for their own Jonathan Edwards and other people. He finds that to be especially egregious. Part of that's true and at least understandable in respect to the man, even in his death, to say he spoke openly against these sorts of things, including extraordinary enthusiasms. That's what he called it. For people, I even got flack not long ago. Oh, you made up that word. What? What? You need to stop Googling dumb stuff. If you get to that point, if you get to the point where you come to me and you say some nonsensical stuff, and there were people, man, brazen dudes, they talk big when I'm not around, they think I ain't coming back. All of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, paleocrat. Right? Yeah, paleocrat. But people will come and say, there's no such thing as the word enthusiasm. I say, go, get online, man. Look it up. Look it up. You too busy going to IMDb to find out if that dude on that cat commercial is the guy from that episode back in the 90s that your mom used to watch with her friend every Thursday. Who cares? Who cares? Woo! Yeah, he talks about the effects on the body. He was critical of that. He was critical of the kind of the weeping and the gnashing of teeth. And so he goes through and as I said, I don't want to go through all that. I actually have it mapped out with the yellow. Made sure to kind of separate everything. But and he mentions erroneous judgments. That's another example, right? And the this idea that happiness is the main point in life. There are certain things that he lists with this particular enthusiasm. And I would generally agree with most of that. But actually, we've already talked about that. We've already talked about it. What we have not, in fact, talked about, the Great Awakening part. Okay? We've addressed it back in the early days. Do any of you, how many people back can remember back, I don't know, how long ago would it be? Over a year and a half ago, where I did an episode on revival, reform, what was it? Revival, reform, restoration. And in that, I defended a kind of restorationism, right? Restoring all things in Christ, that sort of thing. And so I make the case there's actually acceptable forms and unacceptable forms. Same thing with same thing with private revelation. Same thing with you name it. This would be another example of it. But the passion for a great awakening has reached fever pitch. Leaders spanning the spiritual spectrum predict that the greatest awakening in human history may be just around the corner. How often have you heard that? How often have you heard that? You got people on it used to be you had these street corner prophets, these street corner guys. They get up there, and you still have them, but nowhere like you did. Nowhere like you did. That were out there and kind of had their big posters and everything, protesting with a whole long laundry list of different groups of people that are bound for hell, that sort of a thing. There are people on the flip side of that, that say that rather than the doom and gloom, right, the rapture ready crowd, rather than that, we are on the cusp, on the very brink of the greatest thing in the world. And it's not through the hard work that you do. And this would be the difference, I think, between a kind of triumphalism and a post-millennial eschatology, meaning that it's an optimistic. Both of those are optimistic. I'm post-millennial in my eschatology. The idea being that we're gradually getting better and better and better. That involves a lot of ebb and flow. That involves a whole bunch of give and take. It involves a whole bunch of you're going to make advances in history, and there will be times where you're definitely not making advances in history, where it's going to seem as if it's the opposite. You're going to be maybe in a kind of crisis mode, especially in various pockets of the world, maybe even ones that were really important. But you have a lot of hard work. That's why we say, isn't it? Isn't it why we say that you need to give all of your every single thought, word, and deed to align those with the divine constitution of the visible church? It's hard work. In their haste to embrace a great awakening, many Christians have instead become ensnared in a great apostasy. Rather than testing experience by an objective standard, they have subjectively embraced experiences. This is one of the claims and one of the arguments that I make a lot of times when dealing on our side of the aisle with crypto settings. And I say a lot of the decisions that these individuals make, they couldn't point you in any direction other than one of their favorite pundits at a couple different websites saying the crisis. They wouldn't be able to say anything more. And that's okay in a way. If what they were living out were not so so separated from the way that things had been done in the past. And I'm talking traditional behavior for Catholic people around the globe. But my claim has been that a lot of times people will experience something and it's case by case by case by case by case. That's why they're so wrapped up. One of the many reasons why it plays in so well with current events. It's case by case by case by case by case. And you say, well, what did this guy do? Whoa. And you go and you find that. And what happens? Whoa. What's wicked bad? It's wicked bad. Well, that justifies me doing X, Y, and Z. Are you in that area? Starts to feel a little bit like certain areas around the country getting really upset about stuff happening with racial issues in a state, like people who feel and go and flip over cars and burn stuff and go a little bit wild on the streets. You gotta be honest, gotta be frank, gotta be real. Get a little bit wild on the streets, and they're in states far away, no relatives, no nothing, and it's an instance that hasn't even been tried in court yet. It's just a knee-jerk reaction, blam, blam, blam. That's the way it is with a lot of people. That's the way it is when you talk about issues sometimes, like especially with people who believe that we're currently living in the end times, the last days, that this is the end. I'm not saying in the general way. I'm saying in the really specific way that eschatologically we are at the end of the world. It's coming down to the end, and the only thing beyond this is eternity. That's it. That's it. And you deal with that. You're going to be dealing with you're going to be dealing with some very excitable people. And oftentimes not even understanding themselves as much as they think. But in fairness, that they understand the other person, right? The people on the liberal side of things, right? They understand that side better than that side understands them. And that's just true. But Edwards described, if we go back and we say, well, what was it like? What was it like back in the day for these great awakenings? And there were certain questions that I hadn't really thought about. Certain things that I didn't even give, I didn't think about at all. And it's excellent. He's talking about counterfeit love that often appears among those who are led by a spirit of delusion. There's commonly in the wildest enthusiasts a kind of union and affection arising from self-love, occasioned by their agreeing in those things wherein they greatly differ from all others. I'll say it again, about the kind of union from the wildest enthusiasts. I want you to think about this. I want you to apply it just across the board. Across the board. Left, right, don't care. Don't care. Trad, modernist, just across the board. Ask yourself about the group dynamics. The group dynamics. Because we're talking self-love. Occasioned by, right here, there is commonly a kind of union and affection arising from this, occasioned by their agreeing in those things wherein they greatly differ from all others. So the thing that makes them really different from most people, they're going to find that anyone else in that same position, they're going to have things to agree on. They're going to be able to say, look, I totally agree with you on this. I believe that this really extreme position, A, B, C, doesn't matter, any of these extreme positions that the majority of people don't embrace, if if you find yourself in that position and you happen to find yourself confronted by encountering somebody who believes some wacky tobacco nonsense that most people on the planet, even people you generally agree with almost entirely, that there's one thing that's out there. It's one thing that sets you apart, that it's so different, that your camaraderie, you're going to find that you're not just drawn to other people who are enthusiastic, but you are going to be really drawn. Well, I guess that's redundant. You're going to say you're not just drawn to people with similar interests. You're drawn to fellow enthusiasts. And you're creating a superorganism of enthusiasm. If you can just imagine that. And what are the mixins of that? You know? Right here. Right here. And not just the stuff that they greatly differ, but from which they are objects of the ridicule of all the rest of mankind. This naturally will cause them so much the more to prize those peculiarities that make them the objects of others' contempt. Here's one of the difficult things. Is that for an enthusiast, if you loathe them, that actually plays right into it. They anticipate it. It confirms it. It's part of their prophecies that this is going to happen. It's got to get worse before it gets better. Right? And they believe it, and it's proverbially true. Proverbially true. So they just say, well, yeah, John the Baptist, people thought he was a nut. He was completely crazy. Smith Wigglesworth, that guy, people thought he was a real weirdo. The Apostle Paul, early Christians, they'll come up with it. So it just simply fuels it because it aligns them, right? It aligns them with those who have been persecuted because of righteousness. It aligns them with martyrs. There's martyrs in waiting, really. And that causes the bond to be even stronger. In the end, the peculiarities of, quote, wild enthusiasts spelled the demise of the Great Awakening. Right? At that time, you had things like expositional preaching. They're breaking down the Word of God during their homilies. That's the idea. They're going in, they're trying to break it down, they're trying to understand the language, interpretation, studying theology, debating different things, right? Now I'm looking in the comments real quick. Again, if you want to reach me in the comments, you got to make sure to put an @ symbol, okay? I'll go through there in just a moment. But the idea being that there was expositional preaching. So it wasn't just the idea of like self-help. They weren't just winging it. I heard yet another guy recently said, dude, I don't even know how, some suggested thing, probably because I watch videos by enthusiasts, so they're just feeding me more. Thank you in a way, YouTube. Also, no thanks. I'm not interested in that. Don't need it, man. It doesn't help. You're overwhelmed. You're like, I need to get out of here. I've seen so much. I've seen some of the weirdest junk in the universe. And then what happens? YouTube's like, little more, little more, little more, little more. No, 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 don't do it. But yes, please. It actually makes my job easier. I need to get big enough. I blame everybody else. It's all your fault. It's all your fault and my kids. My kids. And bigger responsibilities, yeah. More power, more responsibility, Louie. You just turned 4. He just had his birthday. He's 4 years old. I ain't playing around no more. Okay? But the idea, getting back to it, the idea of moving along, the idea is that there were things at that time that they did, or that they at least emphasized, right? This expositional preaching, expository preaching, replaced by excesses, errors, and extremes. The turning point, and this is according to biographer Ian Murray, the turning point, according to him, in Edwards' estimation, came when enthusiastic endorsers of the revival began to entertain and encourage lying signs and wonders. So they get lost in. They get lost in lying signs and wonders. You know, they get lost in chasing after miracles. It becomes the National Enquirer for expiring minds. Do you know people like that? Do you know people like that where it's like everything is about the end times? My cousin knew a guy who thought he was a Highlander. He really did. Him and a whole gang of people met together at Denny's for studying the Bible. They had a Bible study group. It was actually, a Highlander cult. I don't know, what do you call it? He never saw him again. They went chasing after some other guy. It was some battle. They had swords in the truck and whatnot. I don't know. If I haven't talked about it before, I'll talk about it some other time. Takes all kinds. Remember these signs and wonders. Do you know people who look around and see within, and not just signs and wonders in the sense that a lot of people are talking about when they think these miraculous things like up in the sky, right? Like Fatima, right? The miracle of the sun, Eucharistic miracles, things like that. Those would be obvious. Major time miracles, those would be obvious. But even conversations of them, even where every day it's like a conversation, like it's one of those things. If you look in your YouTube history, and you see a bunch of stuff that treats it like we're living in the end times, and at any moment now, it's like the Catholic version of Left Behind. You know what I mean? There's a Catholic version of Left Behind. In fact, I think there'd be a lot of Catholics that if you ask them, even maybe your more hardline ones, if you ask them about what's going to happen in the end, they may not entirely know. They may actually kind of have this idea in their head that we may be zoinked up first and then some bad stuff's going to happen. They may not entirely understand where their own beliefs even come from. And this especially happened after the Great Awakening. We've talked before about how after these major revivals, historic revivals, after it's done, what happens? Well, it just gets wicked bad. We've talked about that part. It gets wicked bad. People having crazy kinds of, adult relations. Having some, you know what I'm talking about. Making the babies, even if it is out of marriage. Lots of it. Drunkenness. Lots of it. Drug use. Lots of it. Gambling. Things like that. What I learned, though, is that didn't just happen in the aftermath. That actually happened a lot during the revivals. During the revival. For example, he said that you end up having, because of the craziness, you had, for example, people drinking booze. Even by the time you get to Father Lassance, he's talking about the craziness that goes on in the back of the church, which is why you had people sign. Ultimately, he proposed this idea that Catholics sign swearing off tobacco and alcohol completely. It's in his manuals. Anyone who owns the manuals, and I encourage everybody to own them, you're going to see that. You can disagree. I disagree with them. But that's the conditions of the time. And I might not disagree with them about that particular church if I was involved in it, or even in the area. It's Ohio, so I probably all sorts of degenerate. There's seemingly it's like a bottomless pit. It's a bottomless pit of degeneracy. Ohio State. There's like stars. There's these twinkling stars in the darkness of the abyss of Ohio State. And those twinkling stars are howling at the sun. S-O-N. They're part of the wolf pack. That's it. Everybody else, I don't know. Everybody else, case-by-case basis. Case-by-case basis. But Edwards believed that the cause of the downfall, right? What was it? It wasn't just these excesses. It was that friends of the awakening itself had allowed a genuine and pure religion to become so mixed with, quote unquote, wildfire and carnal, quote, enthusiasm, end quote, that the Spirit of God was grieved and advantage was given to Satan. And of course, division arises. It arises between those who resisted imprudences and irregularities and those who promoted them. So enthusiasts, they're constantly enthusing. They're enthusing left and right. They're enthusing out the wazoo. They're coming out of the woodwork, left, right, up and down, to enthuse all over the place. You're enthusing all over the place. Hide your wife, hide your kids. People are enthusing everywhere out there. Everybody. That's what they're trying to do. It's insatiable. It's insatiable. Especially when you got that, when you got worms in the brain, enthusiasm in the veins. You've got that. Not good. Not good. But even then, the colonies were greatly impacted. Okay? The colonies were greatly impacted by it. In fact, not just a little bit. Think of it this way. Even with the messed up junk, right? The messed up junk. The revival resulted in the founding of 5 significant colleges, including Princeton and Dartmouth. However, not long after this began, in 1743, the clergy in America were pretty much split. Pretty much split, divided. Even Stevens, a little 50-50 action, saying, look, this is not good. No, it is good. No, it's not. This is really hurting. And the reason why it's important to bring up pastors and why it matters is because this sort of thing, it goes between churches. You could have somebody, almost any denomination could end up having this sort of activity. Eventually, by 1776, however, Christianity was on the decline. The emotional excitement and spiritual effects of the Great Awakening had deteriorated into apathy and indifference. As Os Guinness noted, however, the real struggle in the period 1780 to 1830 was not between evangelicals and deists, but between those who took theology seriously and those who did not. The first Great Awakening, excess had been the byproduct of revival. In the second, they'd be the bottom line. And there was a mixture. And it was money. And this will be the last one. We're going to end, I'll end with Peter Cartwright. I got mixed up every time I heard that. And tell me, do you agree with this? Every time you hear the phrase Cartwright, do you think about, what is it? Is it Bonanza? Or is it Ponderosa? Right? It's yeah. So like it's I was getting mixed up all the time. Ponderosa, Bonanza, right? Isn't it Bonanza on the Ponderosa? Isn't that what it is? My dad used to watch it all the time. But I always think about that. What was old Joe Cartwright? Wait, wasn't that his name? Cartwright? Little Joe? Little Joe, one of the greatest male actors to ever exist. One of my favorite ever. But, it says right here, lying signs and wonders had felled the first great revival. But revivalism had only just begun. While widespread revivals were absent between 1745 and 1795, local awakenings kept the revival flame from completely dying out. This is something that anyone who's been following the Enthusiasm series, anybody at all, you'll know this. Because we talked about the underworld of medieval heresies. Remember? You didn't have a lot of these big name heresies coming out, a lot of these isms and nations. You didn't have a bunch, but you had heresy all over the place. Little pockets here, little pockets there. Many of them tragically advanced by people with, I share a surname with, and they were making baskets. They're constantly chitter-chattering, unable to just please be quiet. Things have changed. Things have changed. Man. But these local awakenings, they keep the fire burning. And that's true. Look, that was true even for my experience with the Laughing Revival and all that stuff, is that you had a situation where we had seen and heard of people experiencing different things in Florida and in Canada. We'd read about it, Charisma magazine, different things like that. And so we were like, man, we really want to experience this. We heard crazy stuff. We've seen some pictures, things like that. We thought, well, let's go and check it out. But couldn't drive to Toronto. We weren't planning on it. It was close to winter. We weren't driving to Florida. Some people might fly, but we're not driving down there just to go to a revival. Like, that's not how we thought anyway. And we were glad to find that there was one in Grand Rapids. So we went to the one in Grand Rapids, and the one from Grand Rapids happened because it went to the one in Toronto. Then that happened. And from there, the people that were part of Penfield Assembly took that and brought that to Penfield Assembly. And people who went to Penfield Assembly, people who went there but didn't go to the revival, but went to the revivals at Penfield Assembly. So that idea of a spark that goes from one to the other and catches fire, that makes sense to the person who's involved in this kind of activity. It makes perfect sense. But there were major differences too. Major differences. Widespread revivals were absent, but these things weren't dying out. 1796, once again, ignited by the fiery frontier preaching of a Presbyterian named James McGreedy. Or is it McGreedy? Is it McGreedy? I'm hoping it's McGreedy. Hey, McGreedy. Every time we talk about it, we got to say James McGreedy. That's what we got to do. James McGreedy resonated with frontier people who lived, worked, and died hard. No, that's James saying it. Who lived, worked, and died hard. And were impatient with the fine theological points that interested Eastern congregations. End quote. Man, that guy's he's got some grit. Old James, you got some grit in that voice, bro. Got a little bit of grit. Revival historian Keith Hardman described the scene at McGreedy's meetings in June of 1800, and here's what he said. And this is why it's important. Because even in all my studies, I not fully appreciated the significance of this. And saying, the way that it helped me to understand claims that are made and how far back does this go? And certain activities. Certain claims about certain activities. For example. Here, give me a second. If you haven't already, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. All your dreams will come true. But that's not really what sells it. What sells it is that all your worst nightmares will come true if you don't. That's what it is. If you don't do it, every single one of those nightmares, the worst possible ones, they're going to combine together. It's going to combine together. So you're going to be in the dark, right? In the dark with shadows on top of the surface of the ocean where there's no light at all. Even the moon is out. And that the ocean is filled with spiders that have shark teeth that can kill you. Woo, yeah, and that as a helicopter is approaching and you're screaming and you think that it's perfectly fine, all of a sudden somehow a missile flies out, it's friendly fire, hits the helicopter, down to the thing. It's all over. It's all over. Your worst nightmares. So make sure, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Share and subscribe. For you and for your family. We can literally say for you and for the children. Now, First Great Awakening took place primarily within the context of formal church services. And this is some of the stuff I didn't really think about. The frontier part, as well as the church services. So rather than, The first Great Awakening was the church services. Second one took place primarily within the context of frontier campsites. Knew as much, but didn't really process, like, what would the difference be for the person experiencing it? Or for the movement as a whole? The dynamic of that. You have revival historian Keith Hardman. He describes a scene. If you had to guess what the scene at McGree's meetings in June of 1800, if you had to describe it, just knowing that knowing it's 1800, knowing that it's a Presbyterian, right? So you were way before Azusa, way before it, before the Mormons, before anybody associated, before Parham, before any of them. It says right here, the Second Great Awakening took place primarily within the context of frontier campsites. The extemporaneous manner of men like James McGreedy resonated with frontier people who, quote, lived, worked, and died hard. Right? These meetings had 400 or 500 members of his 3 congregations. 500 people! 500 people. McGee said the power of God. Well, okay. So he's going back to, there's not just McGreedy. There's also the Methodist, the Presbyterian William McGee, Methodist John McGee. These guys are all together. They're all together praying. And all of a sudden, all this craziness breaks out. Breaks out all over the place. And where was this? Where was this? From dying out. So you've got these all these individuals are terribly divided. Terribly divided. And they say, what are we going to do? Well, McGee, what did he do? McGee comes in, rolls up, and says, the power of God is so strong on him, apparently, that he, quote, went through the house shouting and exhorting with all possible ecstasy and energy, and the floor was soon covered with the slain. Their screams for mercy pierced the heavens. McGreedy and his associates were so convinced that God was at work that they organized another meeting the following month at Gasper River. To their amazement, people traveled as far as 100 miles away to attend what was to become known as the first true camp meeting. In the ensuing months, similar revival meetings were held throughout Kentucky and Tennessee. So going back, we're wrapping up, okay? Going back. You sit there and you say, so you got people that get together. There's this, and I skipped over it, but I'll just tell you quickly. This idea, it was a communion service that took place at Red River. And this was 1800. This was 1800. So they meet together to service at Red River. It's the third year that these people had gotten together. 3 Presbyterian ministers were joined by 2 brothers, the Presbyterian, William McGee, and the Methodist, John McGee. The first 3 days of the meetings were solemn and reverent. On the final day, John McGee exhorted the people that there was a greater than I preaching, and that they should submit to him. At his insistence that God was at work, the congregation joyously and frantically began to shout and cry. Others, however, did not like that idea. And what's an obvious reason why? You could just simply ask the guy and say, how do I know that? How do I know that God wants me to submit to you? And the only thing in that laundry list of stuff, okay, so he went around, he was running around the house, shouting and exhorting with all ecstasy and energy. I've got a really good idea. I've got the best idea. Oh, I've got it so good. I've got the best one. All that energy. Yeah. Whoop-dee-doo. Good for you. Whoop-dee-doo. Yeah. Who cares? I could simply say, and look, if people are already in that realm where they are experiencing the gifts and they're experiencing being slain, the Spirit, all this stuff, if they're already in that world, it's a little, hop, skip, and jump away from saying that, no, I'm the one you're supposed to submit to. How do you settle the score? The way that the Lord talks about scores being settled. It has to be settled some way that is to mutual satisfaction and that is able to be trusted not just by you, but by others. Because your claims don't only make sense for you, your claims would be making sense for the operations of the Holy Ghost anywhere in the universe. And with people, with Christians. How it works, what we ought to do, how the Lord, right? The reason for our Lord's sending, the Father and the Son sending the Holy Ghost. All this stuff would be impacted in one way or another by somebody who says, it all comes to me, boys. The Holy Ghost is real thick on me right now. I've got the power. I've got the power and I want to have it so that all you folks submit to me. Seems legitimate. And someone goes, oh man, that doesn't sound good. The wife was like, do something. He smells bad. He can't take care of himself. I don't believe it. Just say it. Just say you've got the power. You can do it. I'd be lying. I know. But sweetheart, look. Not like he's going to give up his power once he's got it. It's going to be a power struggle. It's going to be a power struggle. And it was. Oh, it was. In 1801, the fire of the famous Cane Ridge Revival, for which the Second Great Awakening is best remembered, was sparked. According to Vanderbilt historian Paul Conkin, Cane Ridge became, quote, arguably the most important religious gathering to all, in all, of American history. Unreal. Did you know that, by the way? Did you know that? Yeah. But here's the problem, the unlikely leader, because if you go back and you look at this, you say, well, who is the leader of that? The leader of what quickly became one of the best reported events in American history, and that's a quote, was a man named Barton W. Stone. Did you know anything about Barton W. Stone? No, we're going to end with this little story of him. Okay? So Barton Stone, this guy, I know a guy, I'll tell you next time maybe. If I remember, if you call me out and I remember, I'll talk about Bishop Stone. That cat. Bishop Stone, what a weirdo. What a weirdo. I'm sorry for calling people weirdos, but this cat, he's not really a bishop. He just calls himself that. So, right here it says Barton Stone, he denied essential Christian doctrines like the Trinity. And that's not just true of him. That's also true of the pastor who's the main individual at the revival at Azusa Street. What's up with that, by the way? And it's always been something that divides. Always. From the very beginning of this, that's been something that's been divisive. That's when you know it's bad. It's like, well, what are you guys really divided on? And one of the very first things, like, a lot of us are divided over the Trinity. Like, wow. Okay? Pretty far out there on the limb. Pretty far out there. Let's see. So there was a guy, when Stone, he's a Presbyterian pastor of the Cane Ridge Meeting House in Bourbon County, Kentucky. When he heard about these revivals that McGreedy was having, he traveled across the state to witness them firsthand. He was intrigued by the extraordinary enthusiasms and excitement. Stone determined to organize a revival of his own. At times, more than 20,000 people would listen to revival rhetoric amid songs and shouts. 20,000 people. Going outside. 20,000 people going outside already, that's sign and wonder already for us. You're like, what? Are you serious? And they didn't even have cell phones. Oh, yeah, you're lying. You're lying. It's remarkable. Pentecostal historian Vincent Sinan provides an apt description of the sights and sounds of Cane Ridge, and here's what it is. Those who attended such camp meetings as Cane Ridge generally expected their religious experiences to be as vivid as the frontier life around them. Think about the influence that the world around you has on maybe even your own eschatology, your own ideas. And do you allow that to impact it? These people most definitely did. But that world was one, to me, look, I'll give you an example. What do I mean? So for a lot of people in the West, as the world got cozier, our arguments about God focused more and more and more, and even the arguments against God focused more and more and more on how pleasure, on flourishing and being comfortable, and the boogeyman was suffering. You can hear this even now in the documentary put out by Christopher Hitchens, right, who's dead now, about Saint Teresa, Calcutta, and so like a video about her, right? You can see this kind of thing with that, But like, I guess my point is saying is those who attend these camp meetings and they expect that it would have the frontier life around them, that it's affected by the world around you, that your worldview, that your understanding of the world is going to be affected by that. And that's true not just of Christian people, but also of atheists. It's also of atheists. You can see the way that this plays out. Accustomed to braining bears and battling Indians. What is braining bears, by the way? Sorry if I got a little stumbled up over some stuff a second ago. I was kind of reading ahead on something, and I'm sitting there thinking, what does it mean, like dead men, what does it mean, the idea of the bears, braining bears? What does that mean? Braining bears, I know what battling Indians means. They received their religion with great color and excitement. Let's see. Their godly hysteria included such phenomena as falling, jerking, barking like dogs, falling into trances, and, quote unquote, the holy laugh. The holy laugh. So what is it? Well, apparently these revivals did involve braining bears. That is one thing that I'm like, I don't know if the modern revivals really do that very much. I'm not entirely sure. Do modern revivals do that? You tell me in the comment section below. And that's the question of the day. Do modern revivals, have you ever been to a modern revival or anything like that where you've had to brain a bear? Have you ever done that? But they've got this godly hysteria, what they call is a kind of hysteria. Falling, jerking, barking like dogs. I thought that was so remarkable. Falling into trances, the quote-unquote holy laugh. They'd fall like dead men in battle. They'd get the jerks and shake helplessly at every joint. Peter Cartwright reported that he once saw 500 people jerking at once in one service. And if you want to know what that means and what that looks like, there's a video that you can see. If you look up Brownsville Revival, shaking, you're going to find this young girl, and they talk about her because they know her from before the revivals. They know her, they know her family. And this girl is shaking like mad. Her whole body trembling. She looks like what is it, man? Will Ferrell in that meme where he's like sideways, and he's crying and the wine is spilling everywhere. Yeah, it's kind of what it's like. I don't mean to be rude. I'd like a follow-up with those folks. We should do a follow-up, actually. Where are they now? What's going on? Part of the prophecy was that it's this generation. The end is coming. It's right around the corner. We're right at the end of it. But the point of it all, is simply the idea that you end up having somebody writing as far back as this that's describing the situation as he experienced it, and what he's saying in the 1800s is what we are experiencing now. The same sort of thing. The same sort of thing. And I'm going to say something that might bother some folks. I am one of those individuals who on the one hand says, you know, what we do in Mass and at church is one thing, right? What we do is why I don't do certain things outside of Mass that I do inside of Mass. Like I don't really listen to chant. Like you don't hear me just around the house or in the car popping on some chant. I see that. Right? That's what it's a theology of place with that, right? And I kind of feel like it's you know the same thing. You know, is that there's a theology of place with this, that you can say, well, my views on charismatic gifts and charismatic things that can happen. I would like to see the world face its sin. I would like to see the world experience something so deep and so profound, so brutal in their heart that they can't help but to feel and submit to the weight that they feel inside, in the recognition that what they have done for a very long time and what society has done for a very long time is absolutely depraved. That they would fall to their knees and cry out. That they would recognize the wicked things that they as individuals have done, that their families have done, that their local people, the local towns have done, that their states and countries have done. And that there would be events I would like to see. I would like, if people are part of these kinds of things, that goes and energizes people and gets them motivated and excited, and not this cheap nonsense that sits there and says, we're going to go and it's going to be this rally. I'm going to get really excited and I'm going to say a bunch of catchwords and a bunch of bumper sticker logic. That's why the revivals were gone. That's it. They end up falling prey to this thing where they associate the feeling, I feel close to God, with being close to God. And there's just a flip side to this too, that some people think that the restoration of all things in Christ from a Catholic perspective, of Catholic social teaching, that somehow that's not going to include emotions. After what we've been going through with secular age, there will be emotions that make the Great Awakenings look petty. The kinds of sins that people who will repent of, people who repent, the kinds of sins that they've committed, that they're repenting of, are so, in some cases, just wild to even think about, and so vast because the apostasy itself is so vast and so deep. And it's going to require an enormous amount of change to the way that people think of themselves and of the world, what they allow and what they don't allow, and a lot of saying they're sorry. Yeah. And so we're kind of in this world where a lot of people, even in the Catholic world, that look for this thing, that they fall in one or two places. They say, either it's too much in the mind that says, well, we just need to give them the right information. And then on the other side, you've got the people that it's all about the experience and their theology is trash. I've said all this before. But I would love to see Catholic revivals that don't go off the rails. Catholic revivals that don't go off the rails. Maybe that's a brand. We got to get the brand going on that, folks. We have got to get that brand. Hold on, let me get my studio mode so that I can see my ending here. Make sure I've got everything set. Oh yeah, that's gonna be good. That's gonna be. Do I have that? Yeah, it's all set. It's all set. Okay, now watch this. Check this out. And there it is. There it is. Oh yeah. Okay. So there it is. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I hope you've had a great time. I know I did. We're going to be talking a lot more about Counterfeit Revival. We're also going to be talking and wrapping stuff up with apologetics, presuppositional apologetics, because this is the flagship. That's why it amazed me. People are like, oh, are you out, dude? Are you like done? Are you not going to make videos anymore? And I'm like, are you serious? We are laying the groundwork for generations and generations of people, Johnny Q and Sally Sue Catholics, who are learning not only to be excited for their faith, but learning new ways to defend that faith in the face of a tidal wave of apostasy, a tidal wave of atheism, secular humanism, nihilism. And we're training. Of course I'm coming back. And now I'm coming back with a gusto. Why? Because there's a book and it's out of my hands. Right? Got to deal with that. But at the same time, it's coming. I can say that. It's done. I wrote it. It's done. It's over. It's over. Now you just got to wait. Hurry up and wait. Make sure. Go check out more of the material we have in the description below. You can see all the stuff, our Telegram channel, our group that we have there, the chat. It is awesome. We have a prayer chat. You can see right there, a prayer chat. The Canine Brigade. We got to get that bugger going. We got to do a bunch of stuff. And Fat Shame to Fitness. If you want to lose weight and feel great, and you're sick and tired of having to not eat chocolate or not eat what you want and do all these rigorous things, and you just want to simply learn what it means to be hungry and what it means to be full and to only eat in that order of things, then you got to join us, Fat Shame to Fitness. Do all that, find it in the description below. Until next time, never give up, keep on smiling, and memento mori.
I wanted to make people dream bigger thoughts.